Welcome back. Welcome back. This is one of my favorite topics because this one is so valuable for men out there and for women that are trying to understand themselves a little bit more. So, here's the thing. The biology between the male mind and the female mind is very different. And I'm not going to get into a battle of the sexes. That's not why we're here. But we are equal and different. And our differences give us different skill sets that help us in achieving our goals. So we do need to go a little bit back into caveman times and cave woman times because honestly, our brains have not changed that dramatically since then. And our roles back then are similar to our roles now overall, but we process information, especially emotions, very different. So, this entire lesson is to kind of bridge the gap, not do the battle of the sexes, but bring us together so that we understand our differences and can appreciate them, so that we can come together, build empires, build healthy relationships, and attract great partners. So, let's dive straight into it. Our objectives this go around is to understand conversation and effective communication when you are talking to a woman, because how you speak to a woman is very different than how you're going to speak to a man. And active listening techniques, because speaking to women also needs to be received slightly differently. And then finally, the anatomy of the female brain versus the male brain. Ooh, one of my favorite conversations because I love to nerd out on this concept. So here's the question of the moment of the hour, and I'm sure us guys out there have thought about it. What is this woman talking about? She's rambling, she's telling a story, she's emotional, she's quiet, or maybe she got super loud and then got really quiet, and you're like, what went wrong? What happened? Or maybe she was just fine for a couple of hours and then silence. Woo, we're here to talk about that. But first and foremost, you have to really come in with an open mind, an open point of view, because what I share with you today will probably be different than what you knew before. And that has to do with the neuroanatomy of the brain, because the female brain and the male brain are so different. So, how women think. You have maybe been thinking of this since like kindergarten, where you're like, why did she do that? And it maybe still haunts you to this day. Some things about women you should know, right? So, did you ever wonder why women tend to ramble on whenever they're telling a story that you could have told in 2 minutes or less? Well, there's a reason for that. And it really actually goes back to primal times, cavewoman times, is men went out there into the wilderness in maybe groups, maybe on their own, to go hunt for things. They went to go kill things. They went to go bring back food, and they protected the shelter. So they're providing, they're protecting. And women had very different roles. Women had the roles of mostly childbearing back then, but also gathering materials for the home environment. So they would go out into the wilderness as well, but with a very different agenda. Their agenda might have been to go collect things that would be good for the home. Maybe it would be firewood, maybe it would be berries, maybe it would be something else that was needed for survival. And because of that, the woman's processing to be able to achieve her goal was very different from the male's processing. The male was going to go hunt things. The woman was going to go find things, gather things. And she had to really remember what was there and then also be able to decipher if it was good for the family or bad for the family. So we call these things berry markers. And berry markers are how we process information as women to be able to go discover things, find them, and collect them. That way we can bring them back to our mates. So think of it like a berry bush. A woman would go out there into the world and she would need to make sure that she could remember all of the little details that got her to this berry bush. And this berry bush had to be this bush because maybe the bush right next to it with slightly different berries was poisonous. So it was really important that she remembered all the little finite details to get her there to make sure she got the non-poisonous berry bush. Well, let's say one day, fast forward thousands of years, we have our boyfriend or we have our husband and we can't go to the store and we need a very specific type of item. So we've made this list and we've actually categorized exactly what type of item it is. For me, it is sparkling grape juice from Welch. It needs to be the red grape. Okay? So I know exactly when I go into the supermarket where it's at, what I'm going for, what I want, and I'm ready to do it. But let's say I bring my partner the list and I'm like, this is exactly what I want. They very well could be in the mindset of go hunt, right? I'm hunting for this item. This item is in this store. But there's different types of Welch's juices, and in different places, there could be the sparkling versus the non-sparkling. So when I'm actually sharing the information with my mate, I need to tell him, hey, it's going to be on the upper counter in between the white grape and the other grape. I can't even remember the other grape. It doesn't matter to me. And I want to make sure I get the sparkling one. It's on the top. It's not on the bottom. It's going to be exactly this price, $3.59. Like I've got all of this down because it's the right berry, right? And that is a little bit lesser, right? It's not about my survival, but that is how the female mind processes information. And it makes us really good at being able to collect things and be able to gather things and bring them back to the environment. This is another reason why they say that men can build a house, but women build a home. All right, speaking of the home, have you ever lost something in your house or you're running a little bit late for work, guys, and maybe it was even high school and you asked your mom, I can't find this shirt. Where is this shirt? Or where is this tie? Or I can't find my shoes. Women are able to be like, right there, that's where I put it. That's where I folded it. That's where I put it in the drawer. XYZ, that's where you left it. And that's because women are very much processing information in their environment. The women's mind has a slightly different agenda from the male mind. I will go ahead and say, as I say all the time, our subconscious has one job. It is here to help us survive. And for women, it's a little bit harder to survive biologically than a man because we are most likely going to be the smaller, shorter, and slower species of the two. And so with this, we really have to pay attention to our safety. So we are always looking around at our environment. Is anything a threat? We always have the keys in our hands whenever it's like late at night and we're walking back to our cars. We have to pay attention to everything. That's very noisy for us. It keeps our mind going over and over and over. And this is something we cannot help. It is part of our neuroanatomy to be able to protect ourselves. So we are looking for things. We actually have different eyes than men. We have a bigger scope. We can actually see more peripherally than the male can. And that makes us so good at being able to pick up on more cues, and especially things are inanimate that could be a threat or a help to us. So that's how we find things so much easier than the males. Now it gets a little bit deeper because, we don't always see eye to eye. And a lot of men think, wow, women are always distracted. They're always like all over the place. My name is Air, for crying out loud. And so I can get a little bit airy, but bear with me. There is a method to this madness as well. Because we are always looking at our environment to make sure that we're safe, and to make sure it's clean, and make sure that it's a great home environment, whether it's our office, it's, our purse, it's whatever. It can get very noisy. And when things are noisy or not calm, let's say there's clutter around or there's a lot of noises, like physical noises going on, it can be really hard to make us pay attention. And that's because of our safety mechanism. It's built into our brains. We cannot help it. Please give us a little bit of grace. But with that, a woman's attention can be captivated. You can get her to calm down and to be centered and to be safe. That is going to be the key goal when it comes to the neuroanatomy of relationships between the male and the female. So a really awesome trick that I want you to be able to take home with you is being able to communicate through touch. When you physically touch a woman, all of the other senses that she's processing, the rest of the environment that she's processing, temporarily is shut down. And I'm not saying it has to be an intense touch. It could be putting your hand in her hand. It could be a hand on the shoulder. It could be a more intense touch for lack of candor. But when you do that, we are there. And we are there for approximately 15 seconds. And when we're there for that 15 seconds, you have our full attention. Now, if you want to be able to reset your 15 seconds, change your touch from your hands to the shoulder, XYZ. That is how you're going to be able to maintain that communication with her without her getting distracted, because she's going to start to think about the dishes that are messy in the kitchen. She's going to start to think about the laundry that needs to be folded. She's going to start to think about everything on her to-do list. She's going to think about, that paper that's due, or that friend that she's supposed to call, or all of the other things that are messy or noisy in her life. That is something I invite you to do with your partners, with your wives, with your girlfriends, with someone you're dating, your sister, your mother, whoever it is. That light touch gives you time to be able to tell them something that's very important to you. All right, emotional expression. Here we go. I've told you a few different times that the female mind is different from the male mind. Now, I am focusing on the female mind because you most likely are a male. This is the For the Fellas Art of Attraction class. And since you are a male, I assume that you know how you think. But we'll see. In the relationship program, I have the opposite one as well. So emotional expression for women means that we have different processing centers within our brain to be able to help give us the benefits of emotional expression that males don't necessarily have. In this case, women have hormones as well as the limbic system on their side. Our limbic system is actually larger than the male limbic system in their brain and in their central nervous system, which is amazing to think about whenever you go back to the reason the programming is different for what we achieve and our goals and how we approach things versus how males approach things. We're very relational creatures. That's why we like to share our feelings and we like to talk and communicate. That is part of what makes us beautiful as women, is we get to share communication very easily. Now, here's another thing. Hormones. I know you've heard of them. And our hormones are different from the male hormones, especially these two in the case of emotions, estrogen and progesterone. With estrogen, we're able to express love and emotions of a passionate nature a little bit more, but that also includes anger, grumpiness, mood swings. This isn't necessarily our fault. We have a menstrual cycle that is always in motion, even when we're not actually bleeding during those times. When progesterone goes up and we get more direct in communication, versus when it goes down, we get more indecisive in communication. This is a beautiful process for us because it does make us very emotionally in tune with our environment, not just with other people, but with plants, as well as animals, as well as children. So it's actually a beautiful thing. But if you want to date a woman, you need to be able to understand this. That way you can communicate very clearly and be able to have that provision that we talk about so much throughout the entire course. So that provision is all part of holding the container. I have said this throughout the masculine versus the feminine energy within oneself. The masculine is here for 3 different reasons: provision, protection, and providing. When you are holding the container, that is part of the provision of the relationship that you are having with this woman. It doesn't have to be a romantic relationship for you to be able to hold the container. In fact, if you are a business owner, you're very much going to be holding the container for all of your employees, your female and your male. But when you are in a partnership with a woman or you're trying to date a woman, holding that container is going to be the difference between if she trusts you and she wants to stay with you versus if she feels unsafe and she leaves the relationship. Because when women feel unsafe, we do leave relationships. It is the number one reason we actually leave. It has nothing to do necessarily about finances or passion or love or anything of that nature. Those are actually part of it, but mostly it has to do with the unsafe feeling. So be able to hold that container. I do have some different available tips for you. To listen actively and empathetically. Okay, this can be very difficult during hard conversations, but in the day to day, paying attention actually gets you so far. Dated a guy once and he remembered all of the details I told him, and I didn't necessarily tell him multiple times. I would just share information with him, regular conversation. And then I realized is he knew all the names of my best friends. He knew what type of flowers I enjoyed. He knew what I was allergic to. And I had only told these things to him once. And it was super impressive. And I actually was very attracted to that type of male because I knew that he listened actively when I shared information with him. Don't get too cocky. Women pick up on the I'm larger than life energy, and that actually makes us feel very unsafe. It makes us feel like you think maybe that you're better than us in some type of emotional way or that we're not good enough. Even a woman with very strong self concept will not be attracted to that type of energy because it's not very magnetic. It is very polarized in a negative way. And the negative pole actually belongs to the female on the receiving side. It doesn't mean that we don't appreciate you. It doesn't mean that we don't respect you. But if you start to really polarize yourself as being larger than life, then we don't feel like we can open up and share information with you. It makes it very insecure attachment style. And we do have an entire video on attachment theory and how that works out available. So if you want to really understand what I mean by that and how to attract a woman back into your life on that magnetic pole, then you need to check out that video. Change tonality. Ooh. So tonality is the way that you present your words. When I am speaking to a male or when I'm speaking to present, my tonality is very clear, sharp, and direct because I'm trying to share information. But when I'm speaking to my partner or I'm speaking to someone I'm interested in dating or a child or even my puppy, my tonality does change. I get very soft and gentle and sweet and kind. And that's not something that's manipulative. That is meeting somebody where they're at and speaking to them in a manner that allows them to feel safe and wanted and cared for. How you speak does matter. So you do need to change the formation of your words to be able to effectively communicate with somebody. Now, you do need to be firm as the masculine healthy presence. Whenever you do decide to talk, you need to know what you're saying is actually what you feel and what you think is best for the situation. This is where some men can get in trouble with the idea of, okay, what do they want? If you don't know what you want, it's going to really rattle that container and it's going to make a very unstable communication, which will definitely break down the relationship over time. We already talked about touch and how to captivate attention. Again, it's that 15 seconds. You have the stage. You have to have a soft touch, though. If you grab her, remember, you're activating that unsafe subconscious. She wants to run away. So if you are trying to share something that's very important, even if it's grabbing in the moment, maybe it's even safety type of thing. Like there's a difference between trying to save her from a car and a difference between trying to save her from making a bad emotional decision. Go slow. You are the masculine energy. You are the provision. So the way that you speak as well, how quick your words are, how quick your movements are, because body language does come into play here, is going to matter. If you are trying to entice a woman, whether it's in the bedroom or whether it is at a restaurant or at an event, going slow really starts to set the stage to make her feel like she can lean in and not need to run away. And then finally, choose a calm place anytime that you're wanting to have a more intimate conversation. If the room is messy, she's not looking at you, she's looking at the messy environment. If the restaurant is loud or the event is loud, she's not listening to you. She's wondering, why is this music so loud? So choose a calm place, not just in noise, but also a clean, clutter-free place whenever you're trying to connect with a woman. Lastly, I want to mention that we do have the podcast, and there's several episodes about effectively communicating with women and males and attachment theory and emotions and boundaries, you name it. It's the Who Am I podcast by yours truly, Kraehmer. It's available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, anywhere that you get your podcast. But I go into even more detail about individual things when it comes to women, and I actually talk with other experts that are doctors, that are registered psychotherapists in this field. So go ahead and find me there as well. And then until next time, thank you for healing and growing with me today.